Hi, this is Geshe Michael Roach. I'm with some senior staff of the Diamond Cutter Institute. We are in a tour of China. We've been to Beijing, Hong Kong, and other major cities in China. And since we have representatives here who have been working in Ukraine a lot, and we have two of our organizers from Russia, then I thought it would be very interesting if we could have a discussion about the situation in the Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia, and that we could maybe explore some ideas that might help this situation. So I'd like to introduce my colleagues. First is Anton Kratasyuk. He's from Moscow. He's a doctor. He has a MD, so he's been a Western doctor, and he also has training in Chinese traditional medicine. So he's a very unusual combination of a medical doctor, Western and style, and also Oriental style. And he's our organizer in Moscow. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Peter Moertl. He's born in Austria, but he's active in most of Europe for DCI. He is worked in software business in Sweden and in Germany. And in recent years, he's been very active in the effort in Europe, throughout Europe, to teach DCI principles. He's one of our main teachers in Europe. And his partner, Marija Kondratyeva, who's organized from Moscow area, has a degree in petroleum engineering, has worked in commercial real estate, and is also very active in organizing our events in Russia, and we hope in St. Petersburg also. So these are our distinguished guests today. They all have a lot of training in DCI principles. They finished a lot of the courses of DCI. And I thought we could just explore with them questions about this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and maybe how it could be solved through using DCI principles especially. So I'd like to maybe ask each of you two questions. I have a list of questions, and I think I'd like to ask Marija the first one, which is that, DCI visits Russia a lot. We visit Ukraine, we visit other countries in Europe. We visit, we read the American newspapers. And for myself, like everybody, I feel like the newspapers in my country are the most accurate, and I feel like what I hear in my own language must be most correct. But, I'm 62 years old. I've learned in my life that you can go to other countries and the same event is reported in a completely different way. So I think that the reporting of this conflict in America by a media which is sort of driven by hysteria. They like to create people to worry or get excited. And then, of course, newspapers in Europe, and I'm aware of newspapers in Russia, television in Russia. And each side has a different story. Each side seems to be pushing the information a little bit hard. And so I wanted Marija to give us some of her ideas about why, in my world, in Geshe Michael's world, why do I see newspapers or television media who are reporting things which are maybe not true, and also could be true, but also biased. They're taking the information which causes more conflict, and they are feeding that to the people in those countries. So in the DCI system, things are coming from me. So what do you think it is? Why do we see this disinformation about this conflict, and what can we do to change it?
Thank you for the question, Geshe Michael. I understand the situation because I experienced the same problem. So I'm from Russia, and my mother, she lives in Russia, in Nizhny Novgorod. And when I go to visit her, she tells me one story about the situation between Ukraine and Russia. And then I go to Ukraine with my partner for teachings. And then from people there I hear completely different story about the same events. And then we read the European newspapers, like German newspapers, And then there is a third story about the same situation. And it is confusing. I'm thinking, why? I'm also asking myself the same question. Why do I see these things in my world? So, and because I understand that everything comes from my seeds. So, which means I did something in the past. And I created this situation, this world. And it means in some small ways I disinformed people. Yeah, so maybe I told people something. I used information which was not really maybe true. I didn't know, I received some information from someone, like for example, Peter told me something, and I don't know if it is really true. I'm telling to Anton. And then it's like it starts to spread. And this is small ways how I think I'm planting this kind of disinformation seeds. And then because seeds grow and multiply with time, so then I see a big conflict in my world, and I see all those different newspapers and media who are saying completely different information.
Thank you for your answer. I think it makes sense. It's logical that something I'm doing about information, it will expand and multiply, and then I will see a lot of misinformation. What do you think I would do about it? How would I improve it?
What you can do is you should be more accurate with people around you. You should check the information, and you should be very clear to other people. Tell them the truth, and what you really know is true.
The next question I'd like to ask Peter Moertl. I think Peter's in a unique situation to answer this question because he grew up in Austria, spent a lot of time in Germany, is very familiar with German-speaking people, and has also worked and lived in the Ukraine and is teaching there now. What we see happening in the Ukraine has been, I've read it described by some commentators in The Economist as being one of the most dangerous situations in modern times. It has a very high potential to become a much larger conflict. And the reason that they mention is that there's a movement or a pattern that both sides of this conflict are starting to gather other people and other countries around them. So what you see coming together are not just two countries, but each of those two countries is gathering other countries around them. And you see a divide, a dangerous divide of one group of countries feeling competition or conflict with another group of countries. So I know that in Russia, there's a strong feeling that the European Union and America have sort of pushed this issue with Ukraine. And in a way, I think people in Russia must feel there's a group of countries who are like pushing Russia and working against Russia. And then I know in the other side, from the American point of view or the European Union's point of view, that Russia is also gathering countries, especially from the former Soviet Union, a lot of the Central Asian countries, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, they are attracting other countries, and there's a new tariff union, which is like a EU movement led by Russia. So that makes European people nervous, and it makes people in the former Soviet Union republics nervous when European Union is doing exactly the same thing. So can you give us your ideas about why is it that in my life, what am I doing? Why do I see not just two countries having a conflict, but there's a possibility, very real possibility, of many other countries being drawn in on each side?
Thank you very much for the answer, Geshe. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk about it, because the issue is in my heart also, and it's a big concern for me too, especially as I have friends in the Ukraine, in Germany, and in Russia. I think the most important aspect of the conflict and the idea of the DCI in relation to conflict is that the things in our world comes from mental seeds. meaning that every object and even such a big event like the conflict that we see between Ukraine and Russia right now comes from something I must have done in the past. And as we analyze the quality of what is appearing now and what we see, which is a conflict between groups, which you pointed out so perfectly, and which is, I think, also worrying people on both sides of the conflict at the same time, must resemble some small thing that we have been doing in the past. And when I look at it, I would imagine that, for example, speaking with friends about another group of people and splitting them up in some small way, I believe resembles the quality of what I'm seeing in the Ukraine and in Russia, in connection with the European Union and with the countries that are friendly to Russia. So if I want to stop that situation, what I would have to do is I would have to be exemplary careful in my own mind, in my own actions of talk and also of body, to not split up groups and to not say something to create groups so they start to dislike each other.
My next question is for Dr. Kratasyuk. There's one bright thing about this conflict. There's something good. The unofficial head of the European Union, I think the strongest leader in Europe right now, is Angela Merkel. She has a lot of support in the European Union, and she sort of calls the shots for the European Union. And on the other side is a very strong leader and a popular leader with a high approval rating in Russia is Vladimir Putin. And I think that what's good is that Dr. Merkel grew up in Eastern Europe, East Germany. She was born in West, but she grew up in East Germany, so she speaks Russian. And President Putin also speaks German. So we have a nice situation where we have a good karma ripening that these two important leaders in this conflict, really the two people who can resolve this conflict, have the possibility to sit down directly and communicate to each other in their own languages. And I heard that recently Dr. Merkel and Vladimir Putin met in Australia, and they had a face-to-face talk in private without a translator. So to me, this is a very positive thing. And my question to you is, how do you think we could all plant the seeds to see this relationship grow deeper and become more close, and eventually that these two leaders would become good friends and help resolve this conflict?
Thank you for this question. I think we all know if we see anything good happening in our life, it must be coming from something that we made, something good that we made towards other people. And if we go to the core of the good wave that we see that two people representing two big parts of the world can communicate to each other, which brings us to the seed that we planted, helping others to communicate better. But we see that it started to ripen, that these two people started have this communication, but it's not finished. We don't see the result yet. And in order to make it happen, I think we should be very precisely about how we speak about other people, making them closer to each other and not divided. But also, maybe there is some very specific thing that all of us have some people who we perceive as someone who we don't like, maybe even enemies. And maybe now is a very good situation to make step forward to them and do it with understanding that we planting seeds for bringing two enemies who perceive themselves as enemies together. I think this could be a very good step from our side.
So I'd like to ask the next question again of Peter Moertl. I visited Ukraine. You know, I was had the opportunity to give some TV interviews there, and one of the interviewers pointed out to me that one of the most distressing or disturbing things about this conflict is the change of heart or change of feeling between Ukrainian and Russian people. So for many years they are very, very close. There's a lot of love between people in the West Ukraine and their brothers, literally brothers and sisters in the East Ukraine and in Russia. So it wasn't so, there wasn't like this idea that they are separate or I don't think they even perceived that border as so much of a border. It's almost like they are brothers and sisters. There was a lot of good feeling and a brotherly and sisterly feeling. And now that has transformed into very divided feeling and a lot of feelings of anger. And oftentimes now when Ukrainian and Russian people get together in other countries or other situations, there's even some tension going on. So I wondered if you could address the causes for this kind of tension, and then what can we do to go back to the old feeling?
Thank you, Geshe Michael, for this question also. You mentioned during your question several times the feeling of brothers and sisters. You made a comparison to a family. And although I'm not born neither in the Ukraine or Russia, I feel exactly that is one of the biggest problems for the people there also. It feels like a divorce in a way. And it's a very sad aspect of this conflict. And again, because of the principles that we learn and teach in the DCI, that the world comes from our mind, from our mental seeds. Maybe in your question there is a solution for the problem. If we have especially relations to people within our family, and there is some anger issues there, I think we would have to be very well advised to reconsider those feelings and those emotions and thoughts that we have to our family members. Because a feeling or an action of anger, just like any other action, can grow and create big events just like this conflict. And so if we are able to reverse these kind of emotions and problems in our families and with close friends, this could be the seed to change the situation and bring back peace and the feeling of familiarity in the Ukraine and Russia.
May I ask a follow-up question about that? So I see outside of me people who were like brothers and sisters become almost like divorce. And your advice, which I think is very good advice, is that I should look inside, for example, my own family relationships and try to bring people together and recover feelings of warmth for each other. My question to you is there some specific way that you can think of to direct the power of that small seed to this conflict? When I plant a seed of warmth in my own family, how do I make that seed to open towards this conflict?
Thank you for the follow-up question also. I really appreciate it, and I think it's a very logical and necessary question to ask. How can a relatively small action like bringing someone together in my family have an effect on a big conflict in the Ukraine and in Russia? And I think most importantly, you would have to remember the truth that the events and things in our world come from our mental seeds. And when I remember that, the seed is much more powerful than just fixing a family issue, which also will have an effect, but it will maybe take much longer time to materialize. So remembering that things come from my mental seeds, and then also consciously dedicating that action to the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. And maybe not only that, but making it even bigger and thinking that by the action of me bringing together people in my family, may all conflict between groups and in families on this planet and in other planets also be reverted, and may there be harmony and a good feeling of cooperation everywhere.
I'd like to ask Marija Kondratyeva another question, which I heard in the Ukraine when I visited there, and I gave an interview. One of the interviews I gave on television, the commentator, the moderator of the interview, she had a very good question, and it was that people on both sides, and I heard this in Moscow also, individual people who are not powerful people. They are normal people like you and me. They are not Miss Dr. Merkel, and they are not President Putin. They don't have a power to change this conflict in a big way. They are just one of many millions of people in each country, and there's a feeling of frustration. You know, I cannot go to this conflict area, and I cannot talk to those people there. I don't have time. I don't have resources. I have a family. I have work, and even if I went there, I wouldn't know what to do. So, is there some way that myself, as a private individual citizen of Russia or Ukraine or any other country, is there some way that I can affect that conflict by some like magic way that is not going there directly? Is there something I can do as a personal citizen of the world?
Thank you, Geshe Michael, for this question. It's a very good question, and I believe that every one of us, every personal individual can change the situation, and we are powerful because our world and our reality comes from us, from our mental seeds, and that means we can change it, and we can plant some small seeds with people around us. We can be nice to other people around us, people in our family, people at work, just people in the underground, and not criticize other people. Don't judge other people, and try to we can try to help other people to have a peaceful mind. So this will create a peace in our world, and I think we can do it. We are powerful.
My final question today, and thank you all very much for your beautiful answers, is to Dr. Kratasyuk. You know, we are all here on a tour in China. We are all working together with an international team of, I think, 15 teachers from many countries. All of our colleagues are very qualified, and they represent many parts of the world, are here with us in China teaching this week, and very successfully. And my question to you is, as an organization, the Diamond Cutter Institute, this corporation, which goes around the world and helps people to understand ancient methods of wisdom which can be used for the modern world. So we now have a pretty large organization, and that organization has branches in many countries. What do you think, as an organization, DCI could do with our power of our organization and all of our teachers from many parts of the world and students all over the world? What do you think DCI as an organization could do to help this situation?
I think as an organization, we already do help the situation, because I believe that the very goal of one of the biggest goal of this organization is to unite the world, and having so many branches in different countries and bringing people from this country to one place to teach this knowledge to others. It is already incredible seeds of unation of whole the world. But this is something that we do from our organization outside, And maybe where we can also put our attention is inside our organization. And maybe good solution would be to give local organizers and local teams bigger vision of what we're doing. Because when local organizer starts to working on this event, he's very concerned about promotion, organization, the hotel, and lots of questions. And sometimes we lose this big vision of what we're doing and why we're doing this. And if we could create some new way of communication inside our organization, which could bring to all people in all over the world who are connected to Diamond Culture Institute this bigger vision of what we're doing, then every action that they will do, even small one, having this bigger vision of unation of the world, these actions will be much more powerful, and we can really change the world. And I believe that this is really what we're doing.
So I'd like to thank each of you for coming. I'd like to thank each of you for participating. Dr. Anton Kratasyuk from Moscow, Peter Moertl from European Union, and the teacher in Ukraine, Marija Kondratyeva from Russia also. I'd like to thank you very much for helping us understand this conflict and ways that each of us can really do something to help out with this conflict. I'd also like to thank the John Foley and Carol Reese Foundation in the United States for being so kind to fund this small conference and the last few weeks of work together here in China to prepare for this small conference. So thank you each for coming, and I look forward to a resolution of this conflict and a great friendship.